I want to hear your dream as your own manifesto.
I dream of a world where you can love who you love without being afraid, judged, tortured, or killed.
I dream of a future where solidarity empowers us.
I dream of a world where men respect women's rights more.
I dream of a world where kindness overpowers hate.
I dream of a world where people realize that deep down we are all just humans.
I dream of a near future where world leaders take climate change as a serious catastrophe.
Now, based on your manifesto, I want you to think of something that it personally affects you and you're angry about it, and you'd ask someone that you consider responsible or that you consider that they should have taken on their responsibility but they haven't.
Our society is trying to minimalize a lot of physical issues like eating disorders and anxiety, but loneliness is not amongst the biggest they're trying to minimalize, and I'm wondering why not.
I love doing things alone, like going to a cafe, reading a book at a bench outside alone. But even though I like doing things alone, I don't fancy being lonely.
Garden.
A garden. Full of trees and fruit.
And a spring with clear water.
Hello everybody. The Facebook page you just saw belongs to one of the unaccompanied refugee minors that has participated in the Daydreaming platform for permanent and transient teenagers, a cross-cultural platform for refugee, local and international young teenagers and young people sharing their dreams on how they're imagining their future and how do they now identify themselves, finding at the same time refuge in art. The teenager, who has been inside a detention center for 2 years already, opened a Facebook account with a fake name for security reasons, and as you saw, has only 8 friends. All of them are people he met in the platform. So if the platform stops, what will this mean to this child? The rest of the video was taken from archive on the long-durational 2 years process of the Daydreaming platform, which resulted to a new music theatre play based on the dreams of young people and inspired by the play of Henry Ibsen's Little Eyolf. The new adapted play was not accidentally titled Europeana. Ibsen's play, Little Eyolf, was adapted in a new play in a critical discourse with the life of unaccompanied refugee minors and the way they are treated by the Greek authorities in the first reception in Lesbos, in Samos and Leros, their institutional assigned parents. The children identify themselves in the future through their dreams that consist of free and open society. But will that dream be ever possible? However, after 1 year of research and interviewing 150 unaccompanied minors in the islands inside the first reception, in the wing where they are held, Europeana archives the voice of so many young people around Europe actually questioning what are the principles of freedom and of human responsibility, and are they honestly defended or not? Little Eyolf is a play where human responsibility is questioned, where the parents refuse to accept the identity of their own child who is disabled. But how is today identity defined? Who am I? And am I really accepted? Are my rights defended and exercised? We metaphorically translate the Greek responsible authorities to the parents of these children. We are questioning their ability to clearly identify themselves and the children. We are debating on the practices they follow to protect and take care of the physical, mental, and psychological health of the children. Ibsen's play works only symbolically and very poetically, criticizing greatly the ability to commune and identify ourselves and others. The children coming out from any kind of war are left alone. They come to Greece, that is a passage to the Big West, in order to save their families, and as unaccompanied demand family unification when they reach the place of their interest. Greece, as the first reception country, has the role to foster and keep in the borders these children, because due to the European Council, that is the way the unaccompanied minors can be protected. The Greek authorities, following the European agenda, have the inability to clearly identify the core needs of the children. The unaccompanied are closed within prison inside the first reception centers until they get assigned to NGO centers. Due to our yearly research in the islands and the interviews of the children, we have documented that the children are then mostly neglected and entrapped in a reality that makes them run off, since their core rights are not validated or respected. In all the NGOs facilities that the children are in, there's not even one safeguard outside. There's no one. So anytime the child can just leave and run off. So they're pushing the children to get lost. They just serve what the system thinks is human responsibility, and consequently, so many 30,000 children, based on Europol's last report, have been lost in Greece. Greece clearly lacks a comprehensive protection system for child asylum seekers. That factor has led to the prolonged detention of children in poor, degrading conditions. The Greek government justifies the detention of unaccompanied refugee minors as a protection measure in the child's best interest. Under international law, binding European directives and national law, detention of unaccompanied children can be used only as a measure of last resort in exceptional circumstances and for the shortest appropriate period. However, children are being detained as a matter of course and for a very huge prolonged period. Children face degrading conditions in police station cells and in Coast Guard facilities. Under international standards, unaccompanied children should be able to receive medical treatment, psychological counseling, and legal aid, and be interviewed in a language they can understand in order to identify and address specific needs, including those deriving from gender-based violence and trafficking. None of the children interviewed had had a proper interview in the closed facility centers. Children are often unable to receive counseling, information about the reasons for and the duration of their detention, and legal aid. All unaccompanied children should be appointed a legal guardian to defend their best interests and help safeguard against risks like trafficking. None of the children interviewed had met their legal guardian, nor were they even aware they had one. Unaccompanied refugee minors feel lonely because they're left alone. Whose responsibility are these children? In the platform where all children from different ethnic backgrounds come together, sharing and creating their own community, leaving aside their national identities, one girl from Norway quoted, "I find that in today's global society, we're all hurt, falling into a trap of a self-absorbed system that finds pleasure mostly in the validation of itself. No one can really see us, and no one can really respect who we are and how we identify ourselves. We're invisible. Aren't we all then children of war?" Displacement in time, geography, and language is a key aspect of my practice, and as a theatre maker and a conceptual artist, the theatre performance, I've been making are between cinema and performance in the ways that notions of embodiment, language, and history are staged, working mainly with non-actors whose bodies and histories are embedded in a narrative. My work centers on discourses of resistance and solidarity. I would like to reflect how language operates as a civic gesture. What fascinates me is the power of speech, the power of storytelling, and eventually speech as a form of resistance in all its dialect forms. That's how many different languages and real human experience often manifest in my work. Human experience, in my mind, is the only truth, which can restructure history in so many different narratives than the ones we've been taught. Europeana, for example, works like a play who archives and documents the voice and dreams and ways of different identities of young people who are locating in this closed place called Europe. The platform was created after documenting the dreams of the unaccompanied refugee minors inside the detention centers of the first reception in the islands, as an emergent need to take the children out of those spaces and gain the right of equal accessibility in safe spaces to commune and share with local and international children, leaving aside their national identity, finding a common ground, and dreaming together a different community and a different society. But how can we keep sustaining the platform when getting the children out of the refugee facilities centers becomes more and more difficult, bridging the basic children's rights, stigmatizing and keeping the children isolated? All the Coast Guard facilities and all the refugee crisis, and specifically the matters concerned with the unaccompanied refugee minors right now, are run by the military in Greece. Are we honestly standing up for these children, or are we not? Can the dreams of these children create a new reality? How do we become a swarm and share a horizontal, non-hierarchical narrative? Can we set aside labels and national identities? Thank you.
everyone. I'm Ardan, the third co-organizer of the Young Curators Academy. We are now having the second slot of our second day of our marathon. And a big welcome to the newcomers. We are having this 15 minutes long presentations of our participants. And between the presentations, you can freely go if you want. But of course, we want to have you here for longer. And a big thank you for our loyal followers. I am aware that some people are trying to see as much as possible. And we're going to have this kind of second slot for 2 hours. And then we're going to have another half an hour break. And then the third slot will go on. Thank you.
I am who I am, and here you think I am not. I am German and I'm Vietnamese, a blend of both and something undefinable. A shout of the diaspora on a journey to more self-love. I am who I am and what you think I am not. I am queer and German Asian, surely invested in speaking up. In a discourse that has long neglected us, I'm a statement rather than a response, a colon rather than a full stop. I'm a voice rising over those that condemned our failures and celebrated our silence. I'm a voice uniting with those who in times of isolation intend to build bridges within in order to open up. A new consciousness that creates spaces where we finally touch. Hi everyone, I'm Thao. How are you doing? After this closing myself, I need some self-care first. So, yes, I'm Thao, and I was born and raised in Berlin. My parents came to Germany as Vietnamese refugees at the end of the 70s, 1979. And yeah, I'm very excited to be here and to talk to you, and feel really privileged to present my initiative. So the initiative I'm going to talk about is them. And I initiated them 2 years ago, and DAM stands for Deutsche Asiatinnen Make Noise, or in English, German Asians Make Noise. It is an activist group for people of Asian descent in Berlin to come together and find ways to speak up against racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and other forms of discrimination through an intersectional, decolonial, and feminist approach. And it also strives for more representation beyond visibility. The story behind it. Initially, I started them because I realized how my perspectives as a person of Asian descent growing up in white heteronormative Germany were not discussed in mainstream feminist and anti-racist discourses at all. And in fact, when I took part in a diversity and gender workshop at Free University Berlin, it blew people's minds when I said that I experienced racism too. Shortly after attending, like a few weeks after, I attended an anti-Nazi demonstration and only saw few people that looked like me, and I told myself I cannot wait any longer to be represented. So instead, I started this platform where, since its beginning, many people were able to connect and, basically make noise and attend and organize demonstrations together, organize workshops surrounding empowerment, basically organizing workshops that are for us. The term German Asians, Deutsche Asiatinnen, is and will always be a working title that helps us find and amplify each other. And it is not about finally being seen as German or an attempt to create a new kind of German, because our ultimate goal is to diminish such categories based on nationalism altogether. But looking at German society, it will take us a long time, I guess, because the understanding of Asian people in Germany is very limited. People who are categorized as Asians in Germany are usually Southeast and East Asians, who are also assumed to be apolitical, which is why we are often instrumentalized in discourses on integration. For example, Vietnamese migrants fall into a weird ambiguity in which we are either modern minority that should be forever thankful for being here, or criminals, but never human. These narratives that erase political resistance of people of Asian descent in Germany that have historically been present but have not been talked about, and also denies us of any autonomy. The matter of who is allowed to talk is connected to how events are talked about, and on many dimensions, migrant, queer, and trans lives are told through tragedy and spectacle. In my practice, I am therefore interested in how we live our lives beyond the tragedy that wants to define us. I'm interested in the everyday, the mundane. Literally, I love filming my great uncle cooking goulash in Paris, or my mom joyfully talking about her day in Berlin, Märkisches Viertel. Actually, I wanted to show a video of these two people, but I asked my mom if it's okay, and she said no. My attempt is moving away from the questions of who belongs and who doesn't, and who are the insiders and who are the outsiders, because everyone already belongs and is intertwined in the fabric of this city, this country, this Europe. The question should no longer be where are we from, but where are we right now and how we want to move forward together. And in which direction. Therefore, from all the activities that DAM does, I chose to talk about spaces of joy. I don't want to talk about all the frustration I'm facing in my activist work, but rather the things that bring me joy and also the community. I got a PowerPoint. On this picture, you see Voicemail, which is a spoken word music and comedy event in collaboration with Quarantationi Phoo, which is an Asian German network, and it takes place at Südblock in Kreuzberg every few months, and it is a space for people of Asian descent, which is not restricted to East Asians and Southeast Asians, with many different backgrounds. Some have student visa or working visa, a German passport, where refugees just came to Berlin or lived here all their lives. And they talk about their experiences growing up or just simply being and living in Germany. The stories that are told on stage are often about alienation, racist and sexist encounters, but also about how they have been navigating their ways through their everyday lives. They talk about mental health, but also dating, about work, childhood, memories, absurd everyday encounters, sexuality, heartbreak, burnout, and their social life. Essentially, it is a space to listen, celebrate each other, and in short, just having fun in the midst of non-stop activism and creating. The feeling of belonging in this case is then rather defined by a state of non-belonging and feeling of in-betweenness, of dislocation and being outside of the norm, but also an aspiration for a better tomorrow. So I want to move. We also published a zine a few weeks ago. Time is moving so fast, and they are also concentrate on, of course, the stories and documenting the stories in a zine and manifest our resistance in a society that is becoming more and more fascist. But also, I also try to not leave out space where we can enjoy ourselves and remind ourselves to have fun and to care about ourselves. So yeah, when was the last time you sweat on the dance floor? These are just excerpts of the zine. And yeah, now I want to move a little bit more east to Lichtenberg, and after Friday night, on my way back home after Friday night's opening and Benjamin Ayata's opening speech, I was thinking about the whole makeup of this container, and suddenly I had to think about the Dongsung Center, which is an Asian market in Lichtenberg in East Berlin, and basically in German newspapers, etc. The Dongsung Center is exoticized. People are saying, they're corrupt and all this stuff. And at the beginning of this year, I was collaborating with District Berlin, which is a cultural center here in Berlin, and also with a nail design school that is located inside the Dongsung Center. And then instead of talking about all these miseries and these discourses about being exoticized and so on, we talked about just completely everyday things, about our favorite music, about our favorite places in Berlin, favorite books, and so what I want to say is that it's really important to, as someone who's marginalized and is experiencing racism on a daily basis, is to stop for a while and take care of myself. And yes, that's it. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Huang Ding-Yun, and I was born and raised in Taiwan, and now I still live and base in Taiwan. Taiwan is a country, an uncertified country. It's south of the Japan and the north of the Philippines and next to China. And Taiwan is a small island and famous by the information technology. So some brands maybe you will heard before like ASUS or Acer or HTC, and most marshals, Foxconn is also from Taiwan. So some of you maybe use iPhone, some very important chips in it. It's produced by Taiwan. And I was trained by theater and drama. Until now, most of my work still use the theater as the medium to initiate my project. But a few years ago, I gradually found out that I'm not that satisfied with the concept I know as a theater. So the concept start to change a little bit. Today, I would like to share the concept of theater as a temporary community. Is a little bit sum up my practices past these 3-4 years. And I try to use this aspect to see the theater and try to find a different agency or to see what will happen in theater. So what is the theater as a temporary community to me? That because I was trained by theater and drama, so I practiced for several years and start to not that satisfied with the situation, especially for the conventional theater, just a little bit like now, that me and you seems like within a Pacific Ocean in it. It's a huge gap. And yeah, so I just start to think that I'm trying to shift a little bit about the politics of the theater, especially in the spectatorship within it. And so I try to do something to transform it. And to me, it's more like if we see this as a temporary community, and all of us have to be have to be play the contributor and the receiver at the same time. So that's the basic idea to me. So I prepare 5 questions, possible questions that I also asking myself when I practice and try to approach it. So the first question is, if we see this as a temporary community, and how we can make us feel like we're belonging to the unknown group. Maybe now you can see each other just next to you, and you know each other or not. Have you chat before? And if we see it as a community, we have to exchange, we have to communicate. And we can find the maximum goal that why we were come here, because we are going to see a performance or a lecture performance. So this project is called Waiting for Godot, and obviously it's inspired by Samuel Beckett. And we designed a tent, the circus tent, and we claim that there was a 5-minute performance called Waiting for Godot. It's based on one-on-one performance. So if you want to see the performance, you have to draw a lucky ball, and the lucky ball with the number. So, but the calling number is randomly. So if you want to see the performance, you have to wait. And you know, most of the Asian guy is quite well behaved, so they just sitting there and wait. So if you are lucky enough to get into the tent, you will see there is no performance. Only have the countdown machine counting 5 minutes. So you got an extra waiting moment in the tent. Yeah. So in that moment, I try to cut off the idea of, I try to cut off the common purpose and see what will happen during the durational performance. And the second question is how to see the group of the multitude way to the individual's way. We know that we call audiences, but audiences sometimes with no faces. So that's what I try to do. This project is called Island Bar. In the very, very beginning, it's also the several artists temporary collective. And this is the second edition. Is I cooperate with a Thai artist called Henry Tan, and it happened in Taipei. And you can see the place. This is the Filipino bar, karaoke bar. And at the beginning, Henry and I discussed about the migrant laborers in Taiwan, in Taipei, the situation. And we found out that there is a very, very little space and route to let them speak. So we did the open call, and we invite the foreigner that now live in Taipei for a long time to speak out their stories. And so we got 6 performers. They are non-professional performers and speak out their stories they are from different cities and places, mostly from Southeast Asia. And they will create a signature cocktail to represent their migrant story. So it's a very, very different flavor within it. And this is a karaoke bar, so when they cocktail and sharing the story, they can also exchange the story with the audiences or participants. And also can sing together. They can order song and can share song together. And we choose this bar also for reasons, because the Filipino bar is hosted, the owner is the migrant worker called Mel. And 20 years ago, he moved to Taiwan and met his boyfriend, who is a Taiwanese, and they have this bar. But a few years ago, unfortunately, his boyfriend died because of cancer, so they cannot wait until a few months ago, the first time that same-sex legalized marriage in Taiwan. But he still wants to keep the bar, even though the bar cannot balance his life, and he have to do the job, the full-time job. So the bar only open on Sunday. So we use the weekdays to do the project. And I would like to skip this project. Okay. So the next question will be, what is the extended function toward to the publicity as the situation that we imagine the theater as a temporary community? So this project, this project is called Provisional Alliance, and basically is a foreign theater, and it happened last year, August. Yeah, in August. I have to point out the time because last year, November, in Taiwan, we have a huge election in local government. We select the mayor and the congressman and woman. So in this forum, I try to invite the NGO representative who are working on the emerging issues and some candidates of try to campaign for the congressman and woman in that year. And I invite them to propose and convey their idea or policy through the project, and invite all the audience to discuss with them. And in the end, they will vote for the certain project, the certain proposal they eagerly want to pass. I want to point out the time because it's more like, to me, it's more like how to pre-function the theater as a forum and try to invite more people to real discuss about the issues they are facing with. And we'll so, for example, like this person, he's trying to propose that nudity in everywhere is legal. So he just being naked in the a little bit weird Lotus stuff, yeah. And but a lot of details about this, why it's a foreign theater, but make it like a very theatrical, because I also combine with some religious culture within it. It's a very Taiwan context. So if you're interested, we can discuss it later. So the next question will be how to proceed if we transform the community together, and how we proceed. And this is the project happened 3 years ago. And before the project, I have to mention this period of time that I'm totally lacking faith in theater, that I want to stop to create in theater because of the Sunflower movement. I'm not sure you heard it before or not. Sunflower movement in Taiwan happened in 2014, and the young generation are against the situation that legislative administration passed the law of the free trade agreement with China on the table. So the young generation, including me, we occupy the Congress and for a month. So during the process, which influenced me a lot, we not just protesting, but also learn how to self-organize or self-governance. So after 3 years, I tried to reflect this. So the project is called T-Pop Stone, and the leading performer in the very beginning standing in front of the theater gate, and the audience know this is a performance. And he announced that we have to break through the gate and occupy the theater. So all of us get in and start to discuss what we're gonna do in the theater. So it's also a durational performance that if you want to go, you can go. If you want to leave the movement, you can leave. And during the process, we can discuss what we're gonna do in the theater. So for example, like now you can see someone want to say sorry to something, to their family, to their friends, or to China, and or we will also try to do some practices if you are protesting and a police officer want to arrest you, and how you can protect yourself. So the last question will be how to build the safety and trust if we see it as a community. And this is a project I try to extend it to the public place, and the topic is called "You Can Sleep Here." And now you see a lot of people doing vow, and the gesture is not that good, but I have to explain a little bit that because it's when we try to promise something, and because Taiwan is a pan-spirit and multiple religions country, so we will swear to the air and try to make some promise. So we will have this kind of gesture. And we gather together in the evening and promise each other we will protect each other, and we will spend overnight within the district, few blocks, and sleep there. So this is the situation that the people will choose a place they think they are comfortable with and sleep. So this context is more like deal with the homeless issue with your body and try to experience it, discuss with it. So, but I just abstract the concept that today I want to share with you. And because of the time, in the beginning, I'm trying to invite some of you to get on the stage and to discuss this, because now we're in theater, right? So, but because of time, so I just pitched these two questions that what are the key elements of being here right now? And do you want to continue these temporary community? Yeah. And this probably, yeah. So thank you so much.
Wow, I'm super nervous. Mona, my first name means the moon. So this is a great connection. It took me around 5 years to understand that theater and performing arts wasn't just about the artists, naively, sorry. And of course, when a production was in place, I did see other crews, such as, the technical team, the backstage crew, and a producer, which oftentimes also means PR, project manager, ticket person, call center, usher, simultaneously. But it all seemed like all these other people needed to be there because a director wanted to say something, and therefore performers were needed, and only then were these other crews were called for. And it also took me about the same time to realize that it was completely pointless to do what we generally understand as fundraising or submitting a proposal to the government in order to receive support for creating art. During my first few years as a young new face in the independent theater community in Thailand, I was frustrated to see my senior colleagues not trying hard enough, in my brain, to raise funds or to look for supports, and always giving into limitations that they had. Dear audience member, my name is Sasapin Siriwanij. I am from Bangkok, Thailand. I am a performing artist, actor, dancer, physical theater performer, sometimes director, a lot of times manager and producer. And curator is somewhat a very difficult term for me to own. And most recently, artistic director of Bangkok International Performing Arts Meeting, or BIPAM, which I have 3 more booklets. If you're interested, you can pick them up later. Also, speaking of being a performing artist, I have a show within the context of Herbstsalon on November the 2nd at 4 p.m. if you're interested. Yeah. Anyway, such things as government subsidy or state support are absolutely inexistent in my country. 0. Our cultural center has never reached out to the local arts community and stands as a huge empty dinosaur for organizations with enough money to rent its building. The Ministry of Culture's main duty is known to be to protect and preserve what is regarded the good and the beautiful of our culture, which means high traditional art or contemporary art that preaches about the nation, the religion, the monarchy, 3 very super important pillars of our country, or contemporary artists whose work got recognized and praised by foreign countries. Our biggest art center in downtown Bangkok, very important, very reaching out to the communities and the public a lot, in the heart of Bangkok, free admission. This place is under constant threat of being taken over by the local government and turned into another shopping mall in Bangkok, because we don't have enough, of course. No, we don't. In other words, to have their support, you have to be important. But there is no way to prove to them that you're important if they don't already believe so, or if there is no other powerful Western country to tell them that you are. So looking back to the theater community that I'm in, well, this means that we, the artists or the art community, have to be strong on our own. Our artists are great. I'm not worried about them. They, constantly having wonderful ideas and creating fantastic work. But making performances started to become more difficult when everyone wanted to be a great artist. Nobody wanted to be a great stage manager, a great technical director, an amazing dramaturg, a strong manager, a powerful producer. No. There was only one aspiration in the community: to become a director. And of course, we should let the directors and artists do their work. But what about the ecosystem around them? without which their work wouldn't even materialize. It's only now, having entered the theater community in Thailand around 10 years ago, that now I look back and I recognize that my recent efforts and projects are being kind of like raising a non-army, a term which I coined myself not very long ago. A non-army, because it is an army that looks nothing like one and speaks nothing of its warlike mission. Now, against who or what? Against the idea that the artist is the only important person in the arts community, and against our government's idea that we, the contemporary theater community, is unworthy of their attention. How do you fight? You know, if someone presses you from a direction, it's very natural, I think, to try to push back the same way as a way to fight. But because the context now is Thailand, a peculiar country in an equally peculiar region as Southeast Asia, a lot of people have figured out a more effective way to fight the Heimat back. So I would like to demonstrate this strategy in a more or less performative way. Can I have one row of you guys standing up, maybe the fourth row from, yeah, maybe the 5 of you here, and if you would join them. Unfortunately, you will be acting as a Heimat for me. Yes, just stand up maybe in one row, all these people in this row, if you would. Yeah, or maybe just 5 of you. Thank you so much. Now, my Heimateers, could you please make fists with your hands? Hold the body in front of you, just like that, beautiful. And with all the people in your row, just please line up your fists together. Make one strong line. Make the strong line of Heimat so strong, so indestructible, and you are powerful because your fists are super identical with like national identity power. Thank you. That's our Heimat. Could you be my warrior and you, my 2 warriors? Please try to break. Please try to break the Heimat. My Heimateers, please stay strong. Try to break them with your hands so that you can go through from one side to the other. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Our Heimat is not very strong. Thank you. Can we have a round of applause for this little performance? So, can I borrow your fist again, just to show them? So if the Heimat is a strong line like this, what I have learned in my context, that is very hard to try to break them apart like this. But what we do instead is we do maybe this, or you don't even break them, but you go in curves and circle, and now you can go around like this. Because sometimes breaking this straight line is actually not very impossible and very life-threatening in many cases. So yeah, that's the lesson I've learned, that in Thailand it's useless to fight back, saying outspokenly that you are fighting them. A straightforward battle has proven ineffective, although it may sound very frustrating that we cannot just speak about our fight in broad daylight in a simple, straightforward manner. It works, however, if you go around the lines and employ curves and sometimes detours. If you smile everything away, if you reveal nothing in front of them, but you keep beefing up your work in places where their narrow sight cannot reach. I believe that I personally don't have the entitlement to tell anyone how exactly to think or what exactly to do. I believe that the best thing I could do in my capacity is to create space where people's significance and contribution can be recognized in order to engender empowerment, or space where exchanges of ideas can take place. And I believe that I believe in letting ideas grow in whichever ways they wish, and that this growth does not need instruction. So I began my producing work with connecting B-Floor Theater, the collective of which I am a core member, to international organizations in Thailand. You know, if contemporary theater is already already alien to our Heimat, we might as well just work together with the alien organizations in our country who have more faith in what we can do and can achieve. At the moment, the Ministry of Culture still does not quite understand what we do, but you can ask any international organizations, cultural organizations in Thailand now, and they would most likely know B-Floor Theater for our socio-politically commentary work and recommend that you get to know us. One time when we had an unexpected request from the military to visit this show, one of our shows, yeah, we could reach out to the several international partners that we had already made friends with in Thailand as a counter strategy to this threatening situation by the ruling military regime, which they're still in position. They are still ruling us. We have been, as the PM has said, 99% democratic for 5 years and counting. Just a side note to you that actually after this event, the most heartbreaking thing is not just that, but the fact that the theater community, other groups that we asked to have a meeting discussing this, did not want to cooperate with us, did not want to acknowledge that this actually happened to us. As I mentioned earlier, it cannot be just about the artists and their work. So I organized a number of platforms highlighting non-artist roles, you know, the less heard and the less seen, and acknowledging their significance in the theater community. I organized a dramaturgy workshop. I believe it could be the first of its kind in Thailand, with a guest dramaturg, my good friend from Ukraine, to open a space for people to actually discuss what dramaturgy can mean and even envision it as a possible career path. And for a similar purpose, I hosted the first ever stage managers talk in Thailand. This idea came because stage manager, despite being the most important person in a production, is quite lowly regarded in our theater community, and no one aspires to become a great stage manager, nor is willing to learn to do their job well when they have to work as one. In this workshop, we eventually created like a mock-up curriculum for stage management training together, and I have heard recently that one of the stage managers who we invited as a panelist is about to host her own workshop to incubate new stage managers. I even created English club for theater people, knowing that the ability to speak English in Thailand can open doors of opportunities for my colleagues in the community, and we operate now upon request and donation basis. And the biggest section of my work currently is the role as the artistic director of Bangkok International Performing Arts Meeting, or BIPAM. And to me, yeah, actually you already heard of this maybe from Sreyneang just before. Her collective of dancers, beautiful dancers, took part of BIPAM, in BIPAM this year. And to me, BIPAM is another space creating work. And this space is again for the less heard, but in a bigger context. That is us Southeast Asian artist communities within the bigger global context. The purpose is for us, Southeast Asia, to come and meet, listen, and know more deeply about each other. And let the world meet us, not in our exotic glory, but in the reality of who we are. And another purpose is also for the theater community in Thailand to meet, react, respond, and get exposed to other people who are both similar and very different from themselves simultaneously. Last year, there was a number of discussions on the question of producing from producers of different countries, and as a result, there was a young Thai colleague of mine who was inspired to co-found Producers of Thai Performing Arts Network, or POTPAN, with me and a couple of other fellow producers and managers. And actually, BIPAM 2019 just ended exactly a week ago, last Sunday, and it's only in its 3rd edition. There's already future, I think, waiting in the air for us, which makes me quite happy. Word of mouth about BIPAM is already spreading in more directions than I could ever imagine when I first worked on it. And as usual, our government is yet the last to know about this. And now that we have already connections and interests from around the globe, our dear Thai government is just beginning to want to hear our story. And you wouldn't believe that I really just had to literally type up a list of invitations and mentions of BIPAM to prove to them that we really exist. In an attempt to conclude, I intend to continue creating more platforms for discussion and exchange for the less seen people in the arts community. So the next in line that I have in my art, engaging technicians, translators, audience development projects, while simultaneously expanding the space of future by maintaining and improving BIPAM to become a hub truly dedicated to Southeast Asia and a gateway for Thai artists and arts professionals to the world beyond their comfort zone. I guess, because it's not quite fair maybe to empower people through the small platforms, convince them to grow, only for them to walk towards a saturated and dying art scene, which is like a non-existent future. And I have stated earlier that the work I do is like raising a non-army against the Heimat that insists only on what it already knows. This is definitely a work in progress. And I do see progress taking place. Through empowering platforms, I hope that each section of the non-army of the arts grow stronger, and collectively we can make it seen to the world that this strength needs not the Heimat's support, nor its care. Without breaking the straight line of the Heimat, we are moving so fast ahead of them that this straight line will soon be left irrelevant. And then we shall look back and see them trying to catch us from behind. And just an ending note that just earlier the Gorky team asked me whether I would be okay with being live streamed because there's a concern that maybe some of the things we say might not want to be heard by the government. I would say yes. I thought about it and I said yes, and yes, please, I would like them to see me and hear me of what I speak about. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chepkemboi Mang'ira. I'm excited to be here. I come from Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm excited to talk about finding identity and belonging through my work, #OnYourCulture. So where I come from, we get our names from the time we were born, and we are named according to the time we were born, the season that we were born into, the circumstances of our birth, and even what was happening around the time of our birth. And even there are those of us who are given names according to family characteristics. So if in your family you had big ears, that is probably going to feature in your name. But my full names, according to the government of Kenya, are Josephine Chepkemboi Mang'ira. But I like my Kenyan names more because I relate to them and I understand what they mean. My name Chepkemboi means that I am a girl. I was born at night. I am from the Nandi tribe and I come from Rift Valley province in Kenya. And that's where the famous world runners come from. Well, and my surname, as legend has it in my family, comes from my great-grandfather who had been whisked away from a different community called the Kisis. And my people stole him during a cattle raid and then adopted him and raised him. And then I came about. However, with my first name, Josephine, which in my country is referred to as an English name, it came from the colonial period where having an English name meant that you'd gone to school and meant that you'd accepted the colonialist way of life and you could be employed. But I've never been able to relate to this name. So when I started school, the dialogue box where we write our names, I could not fit all my 3 names. They were too long, so I often had to choose 2 of my names. But when I choose Josephine Chepkemboi, the students and fellow and teachers look at me and tell me, oh, you don't look Kalenjin, and which they were right, because I have Kisii heritage, the tribe of my great-grandfather. But when I write Josephine Mang'ira, and I tell the children that and the teachers that I speak Kalenjin, they don't understand that. How could I speak Kalenjin? Yet my 2 names don't reflect that I am from the Kalenjin tribe. So it's against this constant self-debate with my names and my fascination for African cultures, and especially East African cultures, that led me to found On Your Culture, which is a platform where we promote African art and fashion, especially from the pre-colonial period with a focus on Kenya. The importance of this work is because during the colonial period, we were taught that our traditional way of life, our traditional art, our traditional fashion is evil, and it was often associated with witchcraft. So even for one to begin school, we were asked at the time, during the pre-colonial period, we were asked to denounce our culture, we were asked to ban our jewelry, and we were asked to ban our clothes. So this ended up raising a generation of Kenyans who hated their fashion and who hated their art, because we were taught that it was evil and it was less than and it was wrong. So much so that right now it is very rare to find traditional clothes or traditional art or traditional fashion. So with the On Your Culture platform, we constantly share photos from the pre-colonial period, educating the importance of these pieces, what these pieces meant, and the importance of having them now. So besides sharing online and sharing these pre-colonial photos, I took it upon myself to start dressing in this manner, to showcase people how these pieces can be still relevant in today's fashion system. So I collaborated with a really great photographer. Her name is Perpetua. And we would create this series of photos showcasing accessories and items from different parts of Kenya and how they're relevant in today's industry. The next part was to put a call out to ask people to showcase what they wear and what they would wear if we were not asked to ban these pieces of jewelry and these pieces of fashion that we used to have and we used to love. So we got a lot of submissions, mostly from women, and they were always adorned in all these beautiful cowrie shells and headpieces and pieces of jewelry. And we also asked them to share stories from their communities of how these pieces, or what these pieces meant to them and their significance to them in their communities. So these are just photos of some of the submissions that we got, which were mostly in form of selfies. And as you can see, they're mainly women. Those are the most enthusiastic of our submitters. Another thing that we focus on is reconstructing what African beauty is. Because beauty for East Africans in the past was elongated earlobes, elongated lips, and even scarification on our faces. We also loved painting our bodies, both men and women. And we want to bring back this way of dressing ourselves because we really loved and enjoyed being very extra. The next step was to take the On Your Culture theme offline. And we did this by collaborating with a group of brilliant women-led festival organizers called Heritage Chronicles. So we did the first edition in 2018. It rained heavily, but we still had attendees who came out and really dressed up and showed out. The next edition was the Leso edition. And Leso is a famous Swahili fabric, which was made by Swahili women when they'd been emancipated as slaves. They would create these pieces of fabric as a way of celebrating their freedom, and they would wear them and cover their bodies with it. But in Kenya, this fabric is used for house chores, or we use it when we're doing very mundane things, and we never really use it as a fashion accessory. So for this festival, we asked women to create beautiful dresses and imagine how they would wear this piece of fabric that celebrates Swahili freedom, Swahili women's freedom. So many women came dressed up. They even came with their children, and they were looking so beautiful and so fabulous. And it was beautiful to see different ways that this traditional fabric could be used. The next edition, we took it out of town to a smaller, out of Nairobi city to a smaller town. And the response was a bit different. Outside of Nairobi, people still consider traditional jewelry, traditional clothes, or just anything made in Kenya as something that is less than and is not worth spending money on. In fact, they always wonder how someone like me who's gone to school, I've gone to university, and I've traveled, but I'm interested in this traditional way of life. So we still continue to do a lot of work and a lot of teaching and a lot of promotion of African art. And we hope to continue teaching Kenyans to appreciate themselves and to accept their identity of the past. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for everybody who spoke before me and to everybody who will speak after. Okay. In 2017, as part of the third Herbstsalon, the Gorky Theatre distributed via the newspaper Tagesspiegel 100,000 copies of a list that documented 33,293 deaths of refugees and migrants occurring due to restrictive policies of Fortress Europe. Parts of the list were also printed on a large-scale posters and attached to 48 street banners around Berlin. This action was done in cooperation with the Turkish artist Banu Cenetoglu, who since 2007, in collaboration with curators, art workers, and institutions, disseminates updated versions of the list in newspapers as well as public spaces, such as billboards and transport networks in different cities. And I'm thankful to the Academy because Banu will take part in some sessions together with us. The list is conceived by United for Intercultural Action, a network of about 550 anti-racist organizations all around Europe. It spreads over many pages, densely filled with a long table. The list is here, so right after me there will be a break, so if anyone wants to look at it, you're welcome. Each line of this list indicates a case of death. The table breaks down each case using 6 columns, indicating the date of the reported death, the number of the bodies found in that specific case, up to 844 persons in the deadliest case reported, the name, the gender, and the age of the deceased, their origin, the cause of death, and the sources that reported the case. The list goes back to 1993, though the vast majority, over 30,000, of the reported deaths took place after 2013. When scrolling through its many pages, one could not ignore the fact that the column where the name of the deceased should be mentioned is mostly filled with an initials NN. That stands for nomen nescio, meaning in Latin, I don't know the name. Consequently, the age, gender, and origin of this deceased are also unknown. Our small team discovered the list on June 20, 2018, when it was published by the British newspaper The Guardian, again through a collaboration with Banu. The number of registered deaths reached 34,361. The same version of the list was presented a month after at the Liverpool Biennial on a large and long black hoarding on the central city street. 2 weeks after the opening of the biennial, the list was torn down from the wall by unknown vandalizers. The list was then reinstalled by the organizers, but continued to be damaged over and over again until guards were hired to secure the site. In the book Against Empathy, the Case of Rational Compassion, argues Paul Bloom, a professor of psychology and cognitive science, that we should abandon empathy and acknowledge that our emotions can lead us astray when we relate to the suffering of others. For him, empathy is like a spotlight. It zooms you in on people you are then more likely to help. But like a spotlight, we can point it in the wrong places, and like a spotlight, it is insensitive to numbers. Professor Paul Slovic, a renowned expert on the effect of numbers and statistics on empathy, argues similarly to Paul Bloom that a response to 2 people in danger is not twice that of 1. Adding just 1 person, you begin to lose empathy. When we began to work with the list, we wanted to break this statistical numbing and wished to get closer to individual cases of death mentioned in it. Looking at its endless details, a question haunted our thoughts. Where are these bodies? Where are the physical spaces where these individuals and this whole community of dead, mostly unidentified migrants, could be grieved, mourned, and given respect to? In Europe today, when a dead body is found, it is handled with standardized, almost automatic institutional response. Pathologists and forensic experts are deployed to collect medical and biological data from bodies and from living relatives in order to enable identification. However, this procedure has not been followed for the most of the victims of the current migration crisis at the gate of Europe. As the former head of forensic unit at the Red Cross mentioned to us during an interview, the majority of the migrant bodies are not properly processed, thus future identification of these bodies becomes an impossible task. Thousands of family members are kept in a vicious limbo as their missing relatives are officially nor dead nor alive, until not proven differently, with no grave to mourn and no death certificate to provide to the authorities. Thousands of stories of disappearance cannot reach a closure. In her lecture, Bodies That Still Matter, Judith Butler questions why some populations are regarded as more grievable than others. And I quote, "To grieve another is to stand in relation to that other. It is a social relation, one between people, but it is also one that is mediated by cultural and political modes of representation." For Butler, depending on the public sphere in which the loss takes place, it can be registered with a great lamentation, great sorrow, or it can be dismissed or covered over as if it were no loss. For her, when populations are erased in war or other forms of violence, and these deaths could have been avoided, the public acknowledgement of loss is crucial to the act of protest. The last updated version of the list is of 1st of April 2019. It documents 36,570 deaths. Thinking about all these bodies as a collective which is scattered all over Europe and in the sea, mostly not identified, as a mass grave. And actually, the estimation that the number of the dead is double than this, because a lot of the bodies are not found, are not reported. Thinking about this list as an archive of death, we questioned how can we both conduct an investigation that could give a body to this highly abstracted database? How can we collect, archive, and use evidence? How could we both get closer to individual cases of death, as well as reveal a more complex structure, a place, an architecture of death, a territory we began to call necropolis? We are mapping the invisible city of the dead, necropolis, that consists of marked and unmarked graves of the migrants who did not manage to reach their final destination in Europe alive. For this purpose, we scanned the list of United in order to identify the places where deaths occurred in proximity to the locations where we are. Using the information available in the list related to a particular case, we launch online research in an effort to identify the exact location where the deceased is buried. If online research is not enough, we make contact with local institutions, city hall archives, detention centers, NGOs, local cemeteries, that might obtain information about a specific case. If our research yields results, we visit the location where the body is disposed of. Once at the exact location of the grave, we identify the geographical coordinates by measuring its exact latitude and longitude using Google Maps application on our smartphones. If several graves are found in the same location, we measure the coordinates of every grave. We make a photo of the grave as well as register a video of a walk from the gate of the cemetery to the grave. Finally, when back in our working space, we input coordinates of the grave into Google Earth and mark the grave on the map, attaching to it traces of our research. This process allows us to gradually build necropolis. The milestones of this city are graves of thousands of migrants that are still to be found. So until now, we localized 587 graves. And the idea of every encounter with the audience and also of a performative event to become, and also this event is actually to expand the community of searchers. So actually, this is an invitation for you. There are 15 cases of death that are mentioned in the list that happened in Berlin, and this is the current search now. And now I will show you a few cases that are already marked on the map of necropolis.
Thanks. Doesn't function, Luis. Do you hear my voice? Okay. So as usual, we're gonna have half an hour break. So 8:45. Okay, a little bit longer than 30 minutes. We're gonna meet for the last slot of our second day.